My name is Roger. 48 years ago, I was adopted at birth, and I haven't put a video out in a couple weeks. I've had this thought going through my head about provision, and I've just been thinking about how to best express it. And I want to take you back a few years to 1995, April of 1995. I was a freshman at Kutztown University, and it was right before spring break. And we had played in an on-campus tournament, basketball tournament, and my team had lost in a championship game. And on the other team were multiple football players, one of them being John Mobley, who's a professional athlete who looked like Incredible Hulk and never lifted weights. Ridiculous. No excuse, but John, he was a good guy. But yeah, so we had lost in the championship game, and the next day was spring break. And so my mom and my sister pull up to campus, to Kutztown University, and they call upstairs to let me know they're there. And one of my best friends, Bill, was riding home with us. And so they call, I bring some bags down, and then my friend Bill and my roommate Lamar start to go back upstairs, and my mom and my sister start talking to me. And they tell me there's something going on with my dad. And I was like, is he okay? And they were like, no, he's not okay. I was like, did he die? And they were like, yes. And I was like in shock. And so I just started walking back to the dorm, and I go up and to get some more bags, and we're walking back to the car, I think it was. And so there was another dorm next to ours, and one of the guys we had played in a tournament the night before had started talking trash. And I just burst out into tears. And Bill and Lamar were standing there. They didn't know like what was going on. They're like, dude, you crying over basketball? And I was like, no, man, my dad died. So then they walked me to the car where my mom and my sister are. And, you know, everybody's giving hugs, blah, blah, blah. We get all the bags in the car. And so we get in the car, we drive back. I think I drove back, maybe. I think so. Drove back home. And, you know, it was pretty difficult. It was April. My birthday was the next week, and we were on spring break. And so instead of having fun on spring break, me and my sisters and my mom were planning a funeral. And so it was difficult. It was right before my 19th birthday. And after that, I was kind of depressed for, I'd say, a couple years. And what that did was it might sound funny, but it provided me something. I shared on a previous video that in my 20s, I had started to kind of work on my inner self. And so after my father had passed away, I was really in a low spot, and just felt really low. I already felt low, and then my dad dies, and then I feel even worse. And so I said, I got to change. I got to get out of this. So I started working on myself and reading stuff and listening to stuff that would help my outlook on myself and on life. And it provided me with the fuel to do that. And yeah, it helped change my life. Was it difficult? Yes. Was it? It was extremely difficult. I kind of can feel it, how it felt back then right now. It was really difficult. But it also did something else. My dad was 45 years old when he passed away. And he passed away of a massive heart attack, and he was by himself. And so can you imagine, like, you're by yourself, you're having a heart attack, and this is before cell phones and stuff like that. So it's not like he could grab a cell phone and just dial 911. He was by himself, and he passed away. My dad did not like the doctor. He did not like going to the doctor, the hospital, anything like that. He was a military guy. He was in the reserves, and he worked at Willow Grove Naval Base, and he went there every day. My dad would show up for work. My dad always went to work. He He would eat however he wanted to eat. He would drink whatever he wanted to drink. But my dad was getting up and he was going to work. And so I got some of that from him. Like I'll do what I have to do. But what it also provided me was the thought of, man, my dad died at 45 years old and he never went to the doctor. And so me being adopted, I don't know my medical background. And so my father passing like that made me say to myself, I have to make sure I take care of myself. Like I have 3 boys and I got to make sure I'm around to see them get married and have kids. And so I want to experience that. I want to experience the men that they become. And my father passing away at 45 and not taking care of himself health-wise made me say I have to do that. So I get a yearly physical. And when I go into the doctor and they ask, your medical background, I don't know my medical background. I'm adopted. But so what me and my doctor work on is, just make sure you take care of yourself properly. And, I live in the Philadelphia area, so, cheesesteaks are around. And yes, I do eat cheesesteaks sometimes, but after this, I'm going to the gym. And I try to work out 4 or 5 times a week. Do I always succeed? No, but it's a part of me. And my father passing at 45 has created that in me that, what I can do, I should do. And I try to eat better and I try to make sure I exercise, like I'm saying. And it also made me think back about my adoption and how that was a provision for me that I saw in a negative way as a kid. And I think as a human being, we don't always look at things as in a positive light, even though they're providing something for us. I was adopted at birth and it was difficult because I felt, like I expressed before, abandoned and thrown away. And when my father passed, it made me start working on myself. And I had to go backwards before I went forward. So I went back to, the time where I was adopted, and I began to look at it from the perspective of I wasn't thrown away, I was handed over. And how it was a provision for me. And even the difficulty in growing up and how I felt was a provision for me too, because it gave me this hunger to work on myself. And now I use that same hunger in multiple aspects of my life. And so when I want to change something in my life, I try to search out how best to do it. And it becomes a daily thing of how can I get beyond where I am right now. And I hope, like, I try to speak on things that I experience as being adopted, because I know there's somebody who's searching out adoption online. Because whenever I have to deal with something that I want to change, I search it online. And I search for books and videos and podcasts and anything that I could do to work through the thing I'm trying to work through. And so I suspect that if you're listening to this, you've searched out adoption or abandonment. And I want you to be able to hear my story and glean from it. And even if you take just a small portion and it helps you today, well, that's the only reason I'm talking about it. Like my struggles have provided me with some solutions that I had to search for, that you don't necessarily have to search as much as I did. You don't necessarily have to start where I did. You can start where I am. You can take everything you hear in any of the videos I might share and say, oh, I never thought about that. You don't have to search through books and this and that. You could listen to this video and say, oh, wow, like, instead of looking at my foster care experience or my adoption experience in a negative sense, you mean there's a positive to it? Yes. even if the environment wasn't what you wanted it to be, and I don't think anybody's environment is always what they wanted it to be, but even if it's not what you wanted it to be, that has provided you with insight, and it's provided you with an opportunity to work on you. Like we've all heard the saying, if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day, but if you teach him to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. And so all these things that you've struggled with, whether it be from foster care, adoption, or maybe you had a terrible parent, or maybe you didn't have parents, or maybe you grew up with friends, whatever it is, it has provided you with an opportunity to search out how to solve that issue in yourself. And guess what? Once you solve it, once you find a solution, you don't have to look for a solution anywhere else because it's in you. You don't have to beg for somebody to help you because you found the solution yourself. Like I hope that you can recognize like the provisions that have been made for you. Like sometimes we look for it to be the family unit, but I can tell you now, some of the best wisdom I've gotten is from friends, from teachers, from coaches. And you've got to be able to look at your life in a way that you've been provided what you need, and what you need is different than what your neighbor needs. And your life is going to look different than your neighbor's life. Like I'm an adopted person, and my adoption is different than someone else's adoption. My adoption is different than I have two sisters who are adopted. My adoption is different from them because I'm looking at it from a different perspective. So everything that I need was provided for me if I look at it properly. It's a matter of looking at things from life happening for you and not things happening to you. And so the provisions that you've been given, whether they be good or bad, you've got to look at how this is helping you and how it can help you, because it can, if you allow it to.